Hello, hello! Back with another low tier guide. This time featuring the Japanese DD Isokaze T4. Honestly, it plays very similarly to the Omikaze, the Bakatake, the Minikaze, even the Mutsuki. They all are quite similar. The Mutsuki has significantly longer torpedo reload than all the others. The others are quite spam happy, so you kind of have to be more considerate. You might have to think further with the Mutsuki. But with this up to T5 you can kind of be spam happy and kind of careless with the DD. Anyway, this is a standard battle, not a domination. If this was a domination, you saw where I just zoomed in, that small little gap. You can actually park there and cap B from cover if this was domination. But since this is standard battle, I'm just going to pop my speed boost and I'm going to head towards the north, where usually I think the C cap is. If you go for this, you gotta... First of all, you can only go for this kind of thing, which I'm doing here. Basically, I'm trying to beat the enemy. I'm trying to make it out through the gap before the enemy can make it to the gap. So I basically want to get there undetected, or worst case scenario, I get there at the same time and I can torp someone. When you do this kind of intercept plays, where you don't know if there's someone on the other side of a cliff, you don't know if there's someone on the other side of an obstacle or rock, whatever, only do them if you have smoke available. Basically, you need to have your escape available, which is your smoke. If you don't have your smoke up, don't do it. It's too much of a risk. Why on earth take a risk like this if you don't have your smoke ready? If there is something there that has any idea how to play, he will straight up kill you. Japanese DDs are not good one-on-one fighters, especially not in equal fights. They're quite good ambushers, especially at later tiers where they get some more gunpowder. They're quite good at ambushing other DDs, but only if they get the jump. If they both get the jump at the same time, it's not good. Okay, here, Karlsruhe have made it. I instantly launch my torps and I turn away, and I think I'm going to smoke up. There's so many ships here. It's not worth losing some HP, I might as well smoke up. Shoot one volley at him while I still have vision. And you make sure, I waited for the second puff to come out to make certain that I'm basically hidden behind the smoke cloud. And now I keep moving away from him, and my torps hit. If you saw how my torps were kind of spread out in a wave, or basically a spread of 6, that made it very hard for him to dodge it. That's you will see me do that quite often. When I shoot, I never shoot them all at the same spot. I always slightly vary my crosshair. Slightly to the right. I'm gonna get a bit closer. Slightly to the right, slightly in the middle, and then slightly to the left. Now, when those spread out based on where I aim, they're kind of going to spread out into this fan-like spread. Very tightly clustered, as I made very small adjustments, but still enough of a spread that it's going to be hard to dodge. At this tier, your torps do massive, massive damage. You only need to hit like 2 of them to one-shot a cruiser, as you just saw. So there's no need to spam them all in the same spot. You don't need to hit 6 torps, you only need to hit 2. So maximizing those 2 hits is pretty much all you need to do to secure these kills. You see how tight this cluster is? It's impossible for him to avoid them all. He only ate 1, but that 1 took half his HP away. Now he's basically going to be flooding, and I saw that there were people shooting him, so he's going to be set on fire. He's basically dead, so I'm just kiting him. Another thing worth mentioning is that you might have noticed that I launched the torpedoes way outside of my 7-kilometer range. And that's something you can do as long as the enemy is sailing towards you. If the enemy is sailing towards you, then you can easily launch outside of 7-kilometer range. Depending on how slow your torps are, the further away you can launch them, because it takes so long for them to reach the point that the enemy will actually have traveled into your range. But if the enemy is sailing away, then it's good. First of all, I rarely recommend even launching torps at someone sailing away. It's just not worth it. Once again, slightly to the left, slightly to the right, about in the middle, I make another spread and I turn around. Now, what I was saying, it's never worth it to launch torps at someone who's fleeing, because not only does your torpedoes have to catch up to him, he also has a ton of time to react and avoid them, because he'll already be sailing away from them. So by the time he spots them, he'll have plenty of time to turn around, or basically plenty of time to maneuver to avoid them. Whereas, well, normally I don't recommend launching torps straight at someone, but it gives him very little time to react. That's the positive side. The negative side of launching torps straight at someone is, especially at higher tiers, when people can tank torpedoes quite easily, especially battleships like 2 torpedoes on a battleship here is almost kill it. Like I killed that battleship with 3 torps because it's low tier. In higher tier, 3 torps at the front of a battleship will only make him laugh. He'll lose maybe 1/4 of his HP. So in general, the higher tier you get, the more you want to, the more calculative you want to be with your torps. And in general, you want to launch your torps from the side, slightly from the front, but in general from the side, because then they are the hardest to avoid, and you maximize the amount of hits you're likely to get. When you launch torps straight ahead, like I do here, is the ship is already presenting a very small target, and when they present a very small target, that means they're very hard to hit multiple hits on them. I mean, I try to maximize the hits by making these fan-like spreads, but even then, because of how far the torps spread out, I'm still unlikely to hit that many torps. I wanted to go for the Wyoming since he was actually giving me broadside, but I keep sailing to the right, because the further to the right I get, the better angle I get at torping this Arkansas, which is obviously fantastic for me, because well, basically the more I keep sailing this way, the better of an angle I'll have. Now it's possible his... depends. Is he gonna turn into the battleship or not? If he turns into the battleship, then he's gonna turn right into my torps. Yeah, he's turning into the battleship. He wants to angle against it, which is fantastic for me, because that means he turns into my torps. And that means another devastating strike, of course. Now... That was close. Basically, the profile he presented at the end, that's the optimal profile you want to be torping. That's slightly from the front, but still in the side. That's when you score your most hits, and that's where you're basically the most effective. Now here you see these ships are sailing away. You often see beginner DDs, or well, new DD players. You see them launch their torps here because it looks like they're in range, but they don't take into account the fact that my torps have to travel. I'm checking to see if he's actually moving, because he is moving. The crosshair, the white part is slightly in front of his ship, which means that he's moving probably at full speed actually, which means that these slow torps have no chance of actually catching up to him. The worst case scenario of launching torps here, or the most likely scenario, is that the torps will let him know that there's literally a DD right behind him who's trying to hunt him down. And that will of course make him just keep speeding up and keep sailing away, because the best way of avoiding torps in general is just to sail away from the DD. It leaves him so ineffective. He can't close the distance in any comfortable way, so he's just going to be pretty much fucked. In this case though, I just want to stay undetected. I realize I have no more chances of basically getting this battleship or this cruiser, so I'm just going to be patient. I'm going to let this battleship slowly sail away, and I'm going to see if I can sneak up and ambush their CV instead. At low tiers especially, CVs are very slow. This does actually, this kind of teaches, I feel like it teaches bad habits to new DD players, because at low tier, if you manage to rush to the enemy base, you are almost guaranteed to kill the enemy CV, because they're so slow and they rarely understand to move. So pushing the enemy base almost always results in a kill on the enemy CV for you. And that leads to people developing these really bad habits. You see it often in ranked, where your DD will go hunting for the enemy CV, or in higher tier ranked, your DDs, instead of capping in domination, they sail around the entire map to hunt the enemy CV, because they think foolishly that they will be able to ambush the enemy CV. But that simply doesn't happen in higher tiers, because just the way that you learn that rushing enemy base gives you a CV kill, the CVs also learn that sitting in base, they eventually tend to learn. Some never learn, but most tend to learn eventually that sitting in base leads you to being ambushed and killed. So they start moving, they stop being these stationary airfields, they start moving away, they start staying with the fleet, and they start having more speed as well. Like high tier CVs can pretty much outrun or close to outrun DDs. The Japanese one have exceptional concealment as well, so they're really hard to spot and so forth. So this kind of teaches bad habits. But until I'd say maybe T6, still at T5 when you're a Minikaze, it's still fine to go hunting the enemy CV. More than likely he'll be sitting in base. This guy was sitting still here. He obviously had situational awareness though, so when he got spotted he started moving. I tried to slow down here to hope I wouldn't get spotted by the plane. Now that I'm spotted by the plane, there's no point to even try to avoid detection. I'm clearly spotted, so I'm just gonna straight up rush the enemy CV. The Wyoming has his guns aimed the entirely wrong way, so there's no chance of the Wyoming actually shooting me. I'm just gonna create some distance from him while closing the distance with Langley. Now, another point, when you go for these YOLO rushes, especially when you have multiple torp launchers, never launch all your torps. Like in this case, I'm still saving my torps because there's no risk for me yet. I'm angling slightly to avoid the bombers behind me, but one bomber is unlikely to do much. Also, the guns are quite great on this ship, so worth using. Get some fires going on a CV, and the planes can take off for land. You might notice I launched 2 torp volleys, but I saved my third one. I'm saving my third one to, if he suddenly decides to turn hard right and try to like get close to me, especially in higher tiers, CVs might often rush you and just take you as a secondary target. If you don't have any torps and you get really close to CV, he might actually kill you with his secondaries. They do a lot of damage. But at lower tiers, well, just aiming for the white part is likely to get you a bunch of hits. But obviously it wasn't turning, so I launched my last torps, and he's gonna die. Either yeah, he's gonna die either from the guns or from the torps. More likely from the torps. So, but saving that one torpedo volley can be worth it, especially if you're going YOLO. Like, how often don't you see someone trying to YOLO rush a battleship, and then they launch all their torps too early, and the battleship turns and avoids it, and then the DD is basically too close to escape anymore, but has no more torps left to deal any significant damage. Especially at this tier, when you have so many torps and they deal so much damage compared to how much HP the ships have, there's no need to waste them all if you're going for those YOLO rushes. I mean, two torps pretty much completely destroyed that CV. I think you need in total 3 to like one-shot it. So you don't have to panic with them, you don't have to waste them all too early. Especially because your cooldowns are so short, you're able to sequentially fire torps when you close the distance to any enemies. And the Tenri is hunting me down. I'm avoiding using my guns so I get undetected. Popping my repair. I'm just turning away. It's worth, you see that the small cogwheels on the top right of the minimap? There's these small cogwheels. If you click them, you can get all these circles showing that I have showing. The thick circle, the furthest showing circle is my gun range. The second thick line is my torpedo range. And the dotted line is my concealment range. It can help you to, if you're uncertain of if someone is spotting you or not, especially if planes are spotting you, just take a look at the minimap and you'll see how far away you have to stay from planes and such. Now this is a bit of a shame, this Isokaze is AFK. I'd hoped he'd be not AFK because I actually kind of wanted to touch on the gun power, something that for some reason a lot of Japanese DDs ignore. You actually have fairly good guns. As you saw when I shot at the CV, your guns are actually quite good. Okay, the arcs are fairly lazy, especially at this tier, but you still have a total of 4 guns, and you have a fairly good chance of fire, and they do have a nice chunk of damage. So you can quite often actually beat opposing Japanese DDs who don't understand the value of the guns. They focus entirely on torps. They don't focus on the guns themselves, which leaves them very vulnerable to basically eating a ton of damage from your guns. If you fight well against another Japanese DD, it's unlikely you'll eat a single torp. Just like keep your distance, keep shooting him. He's gonna try to keep torping you and stuff, meanwhile you're gonna melt him with your guns. Now, it looks like, I mean, I've killed 5 people now, pretty much from full HP, and my team is still pretty much close to losing, it seems. And so they have a cruiser in their cap, so I'm just gonna smoke up so that he can't reset my cap. Smoking up so he can't reset it. There we go. And this is called a stealth smoke. I touch on this in my American DD commentary. You see I launched them pretty much, I knew he was turning, so I launched a wide spread. Because I only need to hit 1 torp. I don't need to hit more than 1 torp. 1 single torp on this 10-year will absolutely wreck him. My torps do like 15k damage. So why try to launch them all with the white parties? I'd rather launch a wide spread and just try to get 1 hit. Okay, battleship hit him as well, I think. The battleship behind me citadeled him or something. So even better that I have this wide spread going now, since I only need that 1 hit. dodge some of them. Don't think he's going to be able to dodge them all. Yeah, there we go. That one torpedo hit I was talking about. And I'm sitting in a smoke that if I had the range I might be able to hit. Oh, Tenry torped, but I'm already moving. That's another thing. If you do this offensive smoking, basically you sit in your smoke and you shoot, make sure you're always moving one way or another, either forwards or backwards. For the simple reason that if those torps come, you already have speed, which makes actually maneuvering much easier. If you're sitting still and you see torps coming, you first have to speed up and then start turning, which usually doesn't leave you enough time to actually avoid them. But because I was, as soon as I started shooting by habit, because I played so much US DDs and, well, Russian DDs, by habit, as soon as I smoked up, I started moving backwards and forwards, just like constantly being in motion to make sure that when the torps came, I could actually avoid them without any issues. Now, will I actually be able to cap this out? I think I'm gonna get the capture victory here. Yeah, it looks like we have no one to actually stop that cruiser. Well, the CV is probably going to prevent him from capping, but it doesn't even matter since I'm just going to cap this out. I'll get solo cap, which is nice because I think this is my first Isokaze game today. I just wanted my daily win and figured might as well make a commentary of it, since the Isokaze is simply a very, very potent DD. Because people at this tier don't really understand how to turn and avoid torps. They don't understand to constantly shift courses. They have very little torpedo protection. They rarely understand to use their fighter planes, they rarely understand to use hydroacoustic search, there's no radar, CVs have very little planes. This is like the golden age of DDs, and it makes it quite easy to play them and be very effective. 350k credits, which is pretty nice for a T4 ship. 8.2k since this was my first win of the day. Got a nice chunk of base XP as well. Actually, yeah, that's a pretty good chunk. That's 2.2k. That's not bad at all. But you can see, and another thing is, of course, the maintenance costs for the ship are basically non-existent. If I hadn't been using camo and premium repair, or premium consumables, my actual repair cost would have been 4,000. So very nice indeed. Alright, as usual, I'll start with the modules. You might notice that I haven't even researched the range. That's because I think it's fairly useless. You're rarely going to be shooting anything outside of 8.3 kilometers. I mean, you might find it useful now and then, but honestly, there's so little XP required to actually get to the Minikaze. I just don't find it worth it to waste XP on this. The first upgrade should obviously be the torps. You get a significant amount of speed and damage. Basically a massive boost to your torps at the cost of only 5 seconds of reload time, so get the faster torps, and then get the hull upgrade for a small chunk of HP. Oh, and an additional turret, which is of course always nice. So torps, hull, Minikaze. If you really enjoy the Isokaze and you want to play it longer, then of course you can go for this, but not necessary. Consumable wise, you don't have to go for the premium repair since you should be getting last stand, so this one isn't strictly necessary. You can just get the normal one, but I do highly recommend getting the premium smoke. You can click the small arrow to switch between doubloons and the credit cost. So make sure you get the better smoke, because not only will it give you an additional smoke, it has 80 seconds shorter cooldown, which means you can use smokes more often, which is of course highly useful for a DD. Speed boost, just default, you don't need a premium one at all, I don't even use it. Upgrade wise, just get the main armaments, it's by far the best one. I mean, if you detonate, shit happens. It's not worth losing all these stats, which basically help both your main guns and your torpedo tubes, just for the sake of reducing detonations. Just not worth it. And I put damage control because these two should become useless, because you should be an intelligent DD captain and get last stand. Captain perks wise, I might touch on something. It's worth getting once you get, I think it was level 10 or 11, I can't remember what captain level, you can get camo. I highly recommend at least investing in this 8k camo. It's only 8k and it gives you 3% detectability, which is the difference between 6.1 and 5.9 concealment, which is quite nice. And finally, captain perks. Situation awareness, you need to know if you're detected or not, highly important. Second, last stand. For some reason people keep going for this torpedo armament expertise. This is so stupid, just because it's a 2 point perk doesn't mean it's a perk you should get early. People get this way too soon. This is a late game perk. This is a perk you get when you have 17 points on your captains. Priority 1, situation awareness. Priority 2, last stand. 3-pointer, here you get some options. You can go for superintendent like I did. I prefer it for the additional smoke. Or you can go for vigilance in case you are something like, if you're a different kind of DD, like a gunboat or like something like a Russian DD who needs to be able to avoid torps better because of the massive speed. And then you go for HP, survivability expert. You need to be tankier, you need to survive longer, because Japanese DDs are one of the few DDs that are effective at any HP. They can be just as effective at 1k HP as they can at 20k, which means that just surviving for a second or a minute longer means you can be 1 minute of full effectiveness of launching torps and being a nuisance. So you get HP and then you get concealment expert. Then when you have 17 points, then you can go back and get this one. 10% torpedo reload is not worth it for delaying HP, delaying concealment. Most of all, it's not worth it for delaying concealment, and it's certainly not worth getting it instead of last stand. Last stand is absolutely vital. Without last stand, you're just a sitting duck. Some people go, oh, but I don't need last stand because I never get hit. Well, if you never ever get hit, then you're not playing your DD properly, because you have to push up, you have to get close to get to those ideal torpedo situations, and you will inevitably run into enemy DDs, and you will inevitably be shot at, and if you don't have last stand, you will inevitably die to some dumb shit. So get last stand. Or don't, but make sure you play against me and not on my team. Anyway, that was, I think, pretty much all there was to talk about the Isokaze. The Minikaze, the Umikaze, the Wakataka, they all follow very similarly. Hell, even the Mutsuki is quite similar. So knowing how to play one kind of covers them all. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short guide. I'm out.